You're tuned into Seconds Out, and with the huge undisputed heavyweight clash looming ever closer, Seconds Out have assembled some of the minds together to give you our picks for the historic occasion this weekend. I'm Eamon Khan. Joining me are Josh Green. Josh, how you doing?
Very, very well. Sad that Mr. Flexen, the Flexecutioner, can't join us today, but yeah, a good, a good selection of voices and minds to bring you their predictions.
Danny is sorely missed, and Josh Hart is also on the call. Josh, you good?
I'm very, very good, Eamon. Very excited for this weekend. Massive, massive fight. Probably the biggest I've ever experienced in my lifetime. So yeah, I'm very, very good.
Good to see. We are not joshing around despite two Joshes on the call here, and we're going straight into the action. Fury versus Usyk. We've been waiting quite a while for it now, and it feels great to finally be getting over the line. Of course, we've got to wait for both men to get in the ring and it'll truly be real. But we had a lot of talk and discussion about how both fighters can approach this, and we've both had opportunities to interview various fighters as to how they think the fight will go. But let's get into our thoughts specifically before we get to, and I give mine. Josh Green, I'll come to you. For both men, what do you think the keys to victory are here if they're gonna get that undisputed crown on their heads at the final bell?
I think the opening few rounds are going to be pretty crucial to this one, just who establishes their footing quicker, who establishes sort of a bit more rhythm. I think it's been widely sort of reported, and it's not an unpopular opinion that the size, the weight, and the reach is going to be fairly key for Tyson Fury. If he can establish that early and use those to advantage, it's going to be difficult for Usyk to land any of his shots. But he's obviously incredibly technical. His sort of his technique and everything from Usyk's standpoint is pretty much flawless. So look, if he can overcome those disadvantages, and I think it's possibly more going to be about Usyk overcoming the disadvantages he faces as opposed to Fury, as opposed to using his advantages, then maybe in those early rounds he can sneak an advantage and then Fury would be chasing. So I think the early rounds are going to be really crucial. I know we're going to talk about how we think it will go round by round, but who can establish the advantages early on? I think lots of people think it's going to be cagey, it's going to be a chess match, and yeah, you don't want to be chasing in a situation like that.
Josh Hart, how about yourself? What do you think is the keys to victory here for both men?
I think for Fury, I'd say the key to victory is probably trying to keep it long. I mean, I'm not an expert saying that, but I think you can just look at the differences in the two fighters and you can see that the physical advantages do lay massively into Tyson Fury's favor. So I believe if he keeps it long, doesn't engage in too much inside action, because if he gets inside, that's where Usyk's going to have he'll probably have more success than Fury there. We know Fury can do it on the inside, but I think just the size difference is just a little bit too much where it might just constantly put Fury in an uncomfortable situation. For Usyk, I think something that I think I've noticed Usyk's good at is just going in and out of range. You'll get in landed shots, then get back out. And I feel like if he can get in a rhythm before Fury finds it out and notices it, then I feel like it is Usyk's fight to lose. But that's only if he gets in that rhythm. And if Fury can interrupt that rhythm, then it's almost like it's his fight to lose if he can just pick him apart as he's trying to come in. Um, I think that's the thing that makes this fight so interesting. While it's not, it's not looking like it's going to be a fight that is going to be all action. But when we sat here as proper boxing fans, we can appreciate, you know, it's going to be a chess match. It's going to be a very high skilled fight. Um, I think that's just the thing that's just got us all so excited about it. We've seen these two, we've seen them overcome adversity. We've never seen them lose. Um, and this weekend, one of them is going to lose. Well, unless it's a draw, but we'd like to hope one of them is going to lose this weekend. Um, and yeah, I just think it's going to be. I understand people say it's going to be cagey in the first few rounds, but I think it could end up remaining cagey throughout the whole thing. So if they just keep interrupting each other's rhythms and stopping each other from trying to pull off what they want, it could just create. Don't get me wrong, it could end up creating a really boring watch. And I'm probably not selling the fight very well here. But that's how I see it going. But for Fury, keep it long. Usyk, try and get into that rhythm as soon as possible. Um, and just keep it on Fury. That's what I'd say. And possibly target the cut as well. I know Usyk's probably a lot more advanced, that he's not just going to be thinking, "All right, it's cut, let's go for that." but there's no reason as to why he can't loop that into his game plan as well. You know, I think he'd be almost a bit daft to not at least try and see if it's still a little bit weak around that area. And if so, and if he gets it open, it could result in, the doctor stopping it. Maybe it gets too bad where Fury can't see and he can't continue. But there's so many possibilities this week, and I think that's the thing that's really exciting about this fight.
Interesting mention of a draw there. I'm not a betting man, but I've seen people online discussing that a draw is shortening, I believe, on the odds, if that's the correct
Yeah,
terminology.
the odds are incredibly low for a draw, incredibly lower than what they'd usually be. Normally, you'd look in what 30, 40 to 1, and this one's only down to 12 to 1. So that says it all. People have clearly brought too much light to it possibly being a draw, and the bookies have seen and gone, right, well, we'll still give them decent odds, but not as good odds, because it's a likely option with how skilled these two are. A draw is very likely, in my opinion.
We'll see if that factors into one of our predictions when we get to our final predictions. I feel when it comes to those game plans, first of all, from the Usyk point of view, that I feel Usyk has got to make this as cagey as possible in those early rounds, the first 1, 2, 3, 4 rounds, if he can, as much as possible, stifle as much as Tyson Fury's offense as he can, so that he can have the gas tank against those physical attributes. He's going to have a Fury that's going to be leaning on him, trying to put his weight on him, trying to tire him out, trying to put the pressure on him. So I imagine Usyk will be on the back foot a lot of the fight and having to move around the ring. So I think he's got to conserve that gas tank as much as possible by making it a chess match early so that he can then put it on Fury in those later rounds. I think that Usyk has to be aware of the uppercut coming in as well too. Tyson Fury has used that to success recently in the Dillian White fight, although Dillian's been susceptible and Usyk hasn't shown that in recent years. It's still a key weapon for Fury to execute on Usyk, as well as the left hook, which really kind of set up the end. I believe it was in the third fight against Deontay Wilder, the crushing end for Deontay Wilder in that thrilling trilogy. I think Usyk has got to watch out for those two punches and use those angles. If it's a Fury on decline, if it's a Fury who's been plodding and not as dancy as he used to be, the thing that got him to the stage in the first place, then those key angles and turning him like he was able to so successfully against Joshua are really going to set that rhythm that Josh Hart, sorry, was alluding to. Other fighters, other people, of course, have picked up on that rhythm that Usyk has set off in the past, but that's a real key point to his game. And if he can get it going early, and if he can get the confidence of establishing and stifling Fury, then I think he'll be on a steamroll on the way to a points victory. Moving forward to Tyson Fury, I feel that Fury, look, we've talked about his size advantages in the ring. Then it's obvious that he's got to use them, and he's got to establish that jab here. If he establishes the jab and keeps the range against Usyk, then he can be in for a long, boring night, but he's picking up the points along the way. He's banking the rounds along the way to the final bell. And I think that'll be the key for him to establish that jab early and hit to the body early and quickly, so that Usyk knows that if there is a weakness there, then Fury can land it. When I visually think of Fury versus Usyk, I don't really think of Tyson Fury being so big and being able to land those body shots, because they're just so gangly and kind of odd to visualize that. But Fury isn't the biggest or the most, he doesn't really go to the body as much as he's not really a patented body puncher as Andy Lee was, who's often in his corner. But if you can set up some body shots early, that will, I imagine, open up to the top for Usyk later on, sorry, for Fury later on in the fight. And that might be the key, as it was the key for the Wilder fight. And then, of course, using those physical attributes as well, closing that distance, because Usyk has to get in close to get his successes in the fight. So if you can catch him, get him in, and lean on him in those rounds, and if the referee allows for it, then you can drain Usyk heading into the later part of the fight, and maybe that will pay dividends for Fury. We'll wait and see. Round by round is going to be an interesting way to look at this, depending on, well, we'll see how the fight materializes. But we'll come to you, Josh Green. Round by round, how do you feel this fight will actually unfold?
I think that's where the draw possibly comes into the thinking, isn't it? I think we've all mentioned the start of the fight being so crucial, and who manages to gain the advantages in those early rounds, and that's going to dictate how they fight and the style they come forward with in the in the middle and in the later rounds. I am predicting Usyk to start strongly. I think he needs to. I don't think it's going to be a fight that if he starts slowly, he's going to win. He's going to be able to sort of ease his way back into and win the later rounds. I think it's very, very important for him to start well. So let's say those first 3-4 rounds maybe tip the way of Usyk. I'd you look at the conditioning and you'd probably have to favour Usyk on that side as well. That would maybe possibly tip the scales his way in the later rounds, but a lot in the middle I would expect to possibly go the way of Tyson Fury, but there's so much that depends on those early rounds, as I said in my sort of initial assessment, and I know you guys have covered as well. So I think, yeah, if Usyk can get those early rounds down, he's got a big upper hand. But if it tips the way of Fury, then I think it could develop into a real chase for Usyk, and it could even be a much wider decision than people are expecting.
Josh Hart, what are you thinking?
I want to quickly touch on the other Josh's point first about obviously saying that the early rounds are going to be crucial to Usyk. But something that's just popped into my head now is I don't really think Usyk's much of a fast starter. I think the prime example is that is when you look at the Chisora fight. You know, a lot of people had it as a close fight, and you'd probably score all the early rounds to Chisora. Obviously, I'm not saying Fury and Chisora or anything alike. We've seen that in the 3 fights that they've had. But it would be different to see Usyk come out and have to be quick, because normally he can come out and he'll kind of just stand in front of you and do a few little bits, but he's more just downloading the data on you to see how someone else, for example, it will stand there for the first 2 or 3 rounds against Fury. And I think he'll just download data about him. And then I think it's towards the back end where he comes on strong, and the way Fury would need to stop that. And obviously, I know you mentioned that Fury's not the biggest body puncher, but it is going to the body. We've seen Usyk doesn't like the body shots, whether the shots that have, you know, caused the controversy were low or not. That's not the point. If they weren't low and he was just, you know, becoming the greatest actor we've ever seen, then you'd think Fury should start looking at that. But I think the early rounds, I think I'd tip Fury to win the first couple. And I feel like Usyk would start to come on in the middle. And then I think as it gets to the back end, I think that's where you kind of just, for me, I can't really see how the back end goes. It depends how the beginning and middle go. You know, if Usyk starts to pull on in the middle rounds, then Fury's gonna have to come and, you know, he's gonna have to up the gears going into the last few rounds, unless he physically can't. And Usyk, you know, because I feel like Usyk's gonna look at the body a lot this fight as well. I feel like when you look at the differences in stature, you know, it'd probably be a little bit easier for Usyk to probably get to the body, especially if he does look at getting inside and finding that rhythm of just using the in and out motion. I feel like you would end up seeing Usyk target the body a lot more, and that could, you know, that could ruin Fury, especially when he's obviously you've seen all this stuff about Fury coming in lean, but I can't remember the last time he's come in a fight. Normally, when he goes into a fight, he says he's 20-something stone, and this one, you know, he's 19 stone. Could him coming in lean, or could, you know, we might see a speedier Fury, but could he not be his genuine fighting weight? Because I think that's a big thing to look at. While it's heavyweights, they have to go through the weight cut. They all have that weight where they're at their best. You know, if they come into, I think a prime example of that is Joe Joyce in the Zhang fights. Comes in really light in the first fight and didn't look good. Comes in really heavy in the second fight and doesn't look good because he wasn't at that weight. And if Fury's not at that weight where he's at his best, then, you know, it could be all wrong for him. But then Usyk also looks in much better shape to what he was last year in the Usyk in the Dubois fight. But I think it's just a bit different there because I doubt his weight has changed much. I think it's just they know the levels of this fight. They know this is the most elite it can get, and they've both put all into their training camp. And Saturday night it's just going to be massive. While it might not be the best fight we're ever going to watch, it's a fight we're going to remember for ages because of the history. But I just feel it'll be a slow start from both. Fury will probably just keep it long, flick the jab out, find his range. Middle rounds, Usyk comes on, and the back end of the rounds, I think that's where the draw comes in because it depends how long it takes for Usyk to get going. If Usyk doesn't get going till rounds 4 or 5, and, you know, Fury could have racked up a 4-5-0 lead, going into that second half of the fight, Usyk's going to be chasing. if he pulls it back, the draw could be a real possibility. That's all I'm going to say. It could be a real possibility.
Yeah, now I kind of feel similar along the lines that you were saying, Josh Hart, that is. I think his first few rounds are early to Tyson Fury. Then I think Usyk comes on, might win a couple of rounds in there as well too. Then the later half of the fight, I think that's all Usyk we've seen in recent fights where Usyk really dominates that back end of the fight there, and I feel that's the same way here. Tyson's known to get his first, second, and third win, but I don't think it'll be enough here. And I think for me, it's going to be a 7-5 in the way of Oleksandr Usyk. Again, that's where maybe the draw comes in and around either way, changes the fight clearly for either fighter. But for me, it's only 1 or 2 rounds in this, and I have Usyk becoming the undisputed heavyweight champion this weekend. Although there is a rematch, so how undisputed is it if there's a rematch? But Usyk for me wears that crown this weekend. Josh Green, who you picking?
I'm similar to you. I'm going Usyk on points. There was something interesting that Josh Hart mentioned there about downloading data. I wonder how Fury is going to adapt to facing someone so quick and so, I guess, compared to him, so small. We've seen against Steve Cunningham. You could even possibly reference Otto Berlin. He's not particularly dealt with smaller fighters so well. He obviously dealt with Deontay Wilder particularly well over the 3 fights. So against those smaller fighters, he's not been able to adapt particularly quickly. And I wonder if he's going to have to learn in the ring and learn how to deal with Usyk essentially on the job. And I do worry that those opening rounds could be a learning process for Fury, and that could mean that Usyk has an upper hand pretty much straight away. So in terms of prediction, fairly similar to you, Eamon. I think a fairly close points decision to Usyk.
Josh Hart, are you siding differently on this one?
Here's the thing. I'm not. I'm going to say something here, and then tomorrow I'll probably have a different prediction again because my
No,
head
no, this is the
is
final
the
prediction,
final.
Josh. This is what we're here for.
Damn. Right. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go Usyk points. Before I hopped on here, I was thinking Fury points, but listening to the way you two broke it down there, and obviously with Josh Green mentioning about, Fury's, he's got a bit of a history with struggling with the smaller fighters, it does make me think if he's struggling with smaller fighters that are nowhere near on the level of Usyk, Usyk realistically, like I said earlier, it could become a nightmare for Fury in there tomorrow night. But at the same time, while he struggled with these smaller fighters, he's always found a way. When his back was against the wall against them, he always finds a way to come on top. And this is where I'm already starting to change my mind again. But I'm gonna lock in Usyk on a very, very close decision.
There you go. You have all 3 of our predictions. Make sure you get your predictions as well in the comments to lock those in. You got to side on either side of the fence. No splinters here. Although, to be fair, the draw is a valid answer if you do pick it, but you got to pick it. You got to back it as well too. We'll touch on a couple of the fights on the undercard that take our interest. First of all, the rematch between Jai Opetaia and Mairis Briedis. Jai Opetaia having some activity, although in blowouts, respectfully to the previous opponents. Mairis Briedis on the shelf, waiting for his opportunity. The first fight was a grueling, tough affair. Jai Opetaia showed his heart and his jaw, which is now being repaired for the fight heading into this weekend. Josh Green, who you going for in Opetaia and Briedis?
I think Opetaia knockout. I think I'm really impressed with Jai Opetaia. He's one of my favourite fighters to watch. I was there for the Jordan Thompson blowout in late last year at Wembley Arena, and incredibly impressive fighter. Since then, he's done his job. He's got a couple of early knockouts on the record, and it's been a long time since we've seen Briedis in the ring. I think Opetaia has improved massively since the first Briedis fight, and we haven't really seen a lot from Briedis. So I would make an assumption that he's probably not quite at the level he was in that first fight. He's certainly got a few more miles on the clock. So yeah, for me, Opetaia, and I think he'll get a knockout on that one.
Same for you, Joshua?
I pretty much agree word for word with Josh Green. again, I was there last year when Oppenheimer fought Jordan Thompson at Wembley at the very back end of September. And it was a fight where I was like, oh, Jordan Thompson might have a chance. He's got that power. But Jai just goes in there and he just hunts you down. He's an absolute monster. Again, one of the most exciting fighters to watch at the moment. Hence why he's always out in Saudi now. Turkey Al Sheikh loves an exciting fight, and Jai Oppenheimer is your man to go to. I don't think there's anyone more exciting than him to watch at the moment. And yeah, I think he absolutely blows away Maris Bradis this weekend. I just think sitting out for Bradis isn't going to do him any good. It doesn't matter how many rounds of sparring you've had, is completely different to being, in the ring on the night. And I just think Oppenheimer gets him out there. I don't know whether it's going to be early or late. I'm favouring early inside 6 rounds. But obviously we know Bradis is of that material of being a champion. And we can't forget that he has been at this level. Obviously Oppenheimer defeated him to become the world champion. So could that experience come in and he could find a way to survive those early rounds and give himself a chance? I'm not sure, but obviously if he does, the ringing activity is going to come into play. And I just feel it'll be an absolute pasting from Jai Oppenheimer.
Echo along the lines of what you both say. One little slight worry for Jai Patai in that, look, he seems and comes across very grounded, but the pressure's on him now this time around to prove all the support that he's getting, all the steam that he's getting on the train towards the top and the bigger opportunities. Talk of him against Deontay Wilder and stepping up to heavyweight and how he do. Talk of him versus Usyk and how he do and fare against some of the heavyweight greats. And that, whilst it seems in the offing there, I just wonder if that's got back to him and maybe he's starting to not believe his own hype, because the hype is there and he's established, that he's a very, very good fighter. But if you start kind of taking your eye off the ball a little bit, it gives the opportunity for an experienced fighter like Bradis to come in and really steal the title away from you. I don't think that happens. I think it's another close fight, and I think that Jai Patai wins on points again. But just a slight little worry there for me for Patai heading into this fight. Moving forward to some interest, British interest in this fight in the form of Cordina versus Kakachi, a little sampler for the Queensview versus Matchroom 5v5 this weekend. Again, Cordina faltering a little bit recently. Kakachi, one of those for me who back in 2019, if you rewind in that mix in the division, he for me looked like one of the best and leading lights there from 2019 after he captured the British title and then moved forward. Had a little bit of unfortunate circumstances leading for him to not really get the opportunities, but he's got the opportunity this weekend. For some in the industry, they're picking him to upset the odds against Cordina. I don't think he will. I think Cordina will also eke out a points decision victory here. Coming to you, Mr. Green, how do you feel?
Yeah, I'm going points Cordina on that one. I think, yeah, you say Kakachi's had to wait quite a long time for this opportunity. British champion in 2019. That's what, 5 years ago now. I think if the opportunity had come a couple of years ago, I think I'd have given him a bit more of a shot. But he's waited a long time around for this. 35 now, I believe. Cordina's still pretty much in the prime of his career, and yeah, he's got the experience in these big occasions. He's obviously done it back home in Cardiff, over in Monaco as well. I know it wasn't the most convincing of performances, but I think he's more used to these huge occasions. He's in his prime, and I think I'm not sure he dominates the fight, but I think he gets a reasonable sort of margin of a points victory over Kakachi.
And you, Mr. Hart?
I agree with Cordina winning, but I'm gonna side with the stoppage. I feel like, again, I'm not saying it's gonna be an easy win for Cordina. I feel like there will be tough points in there, but I feel inactivity on Kakachi's side. He's not exactly had a lot of fights as of late. Whereas Cordina, obviously, he did have that hand injury, but he still fought twice last year. The only worry, and I guess is a worry I guess you could put on the whole card, is could some of them have possibly overtrained and possibly burnt themselves out a little bit too early with the first date in February? It's not like you're given loads of time off, rescheduling a date for 3 months later. So some of them, if they took a bit of time out, it's not going to have been a while. If some of them just kept training, could their body be burnt out? But I just feel Cordina's got that bit more about him. Like Josh Green said, he's in the prime years of his career. and I feel he gets a mid to late stoppage against Kakachi. That's what I'm going with.
And lastly, heavyweight interest again, fluid division right now with the belts potentially scattering after after this weekend and potentially after the rematch as well too. Ajit Caballero and Frank Sanchez, two avoided fighters, it's fair to say here. Caballero maybe less so. He's kind of sought out his own opportunities, but two fighters who want to push forward and seize an opportunity at one of the belts as the division moves forward. For me, Caballero looks scintillating against Arslanbek Makhmudov in their last fight, but Makhmudov maybe proven to be a little bit raw. Frank Sanchez as well, competent fighter, really looks to pick you apart heading into trying to get the stoppage against you. Good fight between the two. I'm picking though Caballero to get the victory here. Potentially a late stoppage as well too for Caballero. I just feel like he's the more, I don't know, he hits probably a little bit harder. I think he's a bit more fluid with combinations, and I think he'll wear down Frank Sanchez, get him on the back foot a bit more, setting up that stoppage finish this weekend. How do you feel, Lean, me, and Josh Green?
Yeah, similar sort of view to yourself there. I think in terms of form, probably points towards Caballero. I think Frank Sanchez's probably best win in his record is the FA Ajagba win. You'd have to say, and that was some years ago now. He's obviously fought some high level fighters, but the win against Makhmudov for Caballero was fairly unexpected. But at the time, it has to be said, I can't quite remember what odds he was at the time, but it was a fairly considerable outsider for that one. So yeah, form definitely points the way of Caballero, and there's a lot of importance on this fight. You mentioned about the belts possibly scattering after the first undisputed fight. One of these fighters could put them in. They've obviously been favoured by Turkey Al Sheikh and Saudi Arabia getting these opportunities. They could possibly put themselves in a position to take a mandatory belt or in a mandatory position, sorry, and claim a world title, which look, a year ago, you can't have imagined either of these fighters would have been in that position. So a big opportunity for both. And I think the form probably tips the way of Caballero. I'm unsure on whether he'll get the late stoppage. I'm going to go a points victory for Caballero.
And last but not least, Josh Hart, I know that you're on the edge of your seat for this one. You've been texting me all week saying, I can't wait for Caballero Sanchez, Caballero Sanchez. What do you think?
No, genuinely, I'm really excited for this fight. I rate Caballero very highly. And I'm going with him to get the win. Again, unsure as to whether he can stop Frank Sanchez because it's a battle of undefeated fighters, both 24-0. But there's just something about Caballero. Again, when you mentioned the fluid combinations, Eamon, I just feel like that's what is going to be the biggest separation between the fighters. I don't feel like Frank Sanchez has that as much, whereas Caballero, he seems to just flow a little bit better. I feel like he'll find a good rhythm. It'll work the body. We saw how well the body shots worked in his last fight. I'm not even going to try and pronounce the guy's name because it's gone out of my head completely here. And I don't want to sound disrespectful. But no, I do think Caballero I think he's just that little bit better. I still don't think there'll be a world title shot anytime soon on the end of this because you've got to wait for the belts to fragment. You got to think, obviously, you got the rematch that Turkey Al Sheikh has said for fear of Usyk in October. Then, we presume AJ is going to get the shot after that. So if they win this, I'm fairly sure, I'm not sure, I could be wrong to this, but I think it could be a WBC eliminator this fight at the weekend as well. I'm sure I read something somewhere about it being an eliminator. So if the winner does want to sit around afterwards and just wait for the title shot, then fair enough, but it'd probably be better for them to keep active anyway. But I'm going with Caballero. I'm gonna lock in a late stoppage. I think he's gonna work the body and break Frank Sanchez down. I think he's just gonna beat him into the corner, pulling him out probably.
And there you have it. We've stuck our flags to the mast across 4 fights heading into this weekend. Once again, make sure you do as well too in the comments below. We'll come back to it and we'll rip into you as well if you got any of them wrong. No, just kidding. We won't. Just enjoy the occasion as well too. Undisputed, especially at heavyweight, doesn't roll around that often at all. Lennox Lewis is there in attendance, and one of these will etch their names into history alongside the great Lennox Lewis. Who will it be? Find out as well too on the pay-per-view, but also tune in to Seconds Out for all the latest reactions as well, as we have Frank and Raheem and the team here working across the week to bring you all that action. So for now, thank you very much for listening. Enjoy the fight, and we'll see you on the next one.